Okay, we are here live on Facebook, and this is Marion Waldman with Teach My Kid to Read, and I am really proud to present Valerie Bird Fort, Early Literacy for School Librarians, our first program specifically for school librarians. So I'm going to introduce Valerie. Valerie Bird Fort is an instructor at the University of South Carolina, where she teaches children's literature to pre-service teachers and future school and youth service librarians. She was a practicing school librarian for 15 years before joining the faculty at University of South Carolina. In addition, she is in the Language and Literacy PhD program at University of South Carolina, very busy. She is passionate about literature and literacy, and she is interested in and presents about diversity in children's literature and materials for striving readers. She lives in Columbia, South Carolina with her husband, daughter, and one of my favorite parts, and 3 very noisy dogs. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. And yes, just I'm going to go ahead and give you a warning that at some point we may hear those dogs. We may also hear my daughter. So right now, she and my husband are getting snow cones. So hopefully it'll be quiet here in my house. But just as a warning. But thank you for having me today. My presentation is called Early Literacy for School Librarians, but I will really be talking about how school librarians can serve all readers. So pre-readers, early readers, and striving readers. Go to my next slide here. There we are. So you just heard a lot about me, but just to kind of get images of what you were hearing. I was a school librarian for 15 years in local elementary schools here in South Carolina. I am an instructor at the University of South Carolina, and I'm also the coordinator for Cocky's Reading Express. So Cocky is our mascot at the University of South Carolina, and you can see one of my pictures there. He's on the back of a bus. Pre-pandemic, we traveled the state of South Carolina going to Title I schools, reading to children and giving away books. We have visited every county in South Carolina, and we've given away over 130,000 books to kids in South Carolina. We have been around for about 15 years, and it's an excellent initiative that the university has to encourage readers. And our main audience, the children we serve, are those in kindergarten, preschool through 2nd grade, so early readers. That's a picture there of me and my husband and our dog Penny when she was a puppy. Next to that is my daughter Katie, and then my 3 dogs. Penny is the youngest one, Mozzie is the little brown grumpy looking one, and then Lucky is our lab. So that is my family on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, pretty much everywhere, and my handle is @LibraryGoddess. My why. So school librarians don't typically talk a lot about dyslexia and how to help striving readers. Really, what I'll talk about in just a moment, our focus is on just encouraging readers, getting them to love books, getting them to find that one book that they are going to enjoy and then get them hooked on reading forever. Well, something really opened my eyes. That is definitely a major part of being a school librarian. But I went to a Helpful Hints for Reading workshop, and it's for caregivers and volunteers at our Dyslexia Resource Center here in Columbia, South Carolina. And I went to that mostly because at the time my daughter was just turning 3, and she goes to a Montessori school, and the way they teach reading is very phonics based, and I was seeing how that was really helping her, and she was really learning and is a really great reader even now at 5, and it just keeps continuing to learn, and they use decodable books in their reading. So at that Helpful Hints for Reading workshop, one of the things that really stuck out to me was the idea that if a student simply cannot read. They are frustrated. They don't know the sounds the letters make. They cannot put those sounds together to make words. If they simply cannot read, then how are we ever going to get them to enjoy reading? So that kind of flipped a switch for me, because as a school librarian for a long time, I was really under the impression that as long as I could find that just right book, that enjoyable, the book that that child needed, then they would become a reader. I was missing a really critical, crucial element there. So that inspired me then over the summer that year, I went to Orton Gillingham training at the Dyslexia Resource Center in Columbia. That training, if anyone has participated in it, is very intense. And for me in particular, as a librarian, we don't learn in our graduate program how to teach reading. We learn how to encourage readers. And so it's a little bit of a different mindset there. And so it's really eye-opening to me to just kind of learn about the scope and sequence of teaching reading. So that's how I really became interested in this. And then how I became connected with Teach My Kid to Read is actually going back to that Orton Gillingham training. That year, I believe, was maybe the first year of Road to Decode, and one of the folks that was in the Orton Gillingham training with me saw a post from Marion and tagged me in it, because the post was, we're looking for libraries, we're wanting to get decodable books in libraries. And she said, hey, you're really into this. You need to check this out. And so I'm so glad I did, because that got me connected to Teach My Kid to Read and Marion. And I have learned so much just being a part of this program and this organization. So I don't know why. Let's go back and see what that slide is. All right, so I'm going to show anyway. Let's see if it takes me to where I want to go. Oh, here are these technology issues we were talking about.
Oh yes, there has to be at least one.
Yes. Well, I can show you this way. So I have an infographic here that I want to show you, and I wanted to just start with, in case some of our audience is not aware of what school librarians do. I want to start there. I know a lot of our audience, they are school librarians, but just in case, I want to give you just kind of an overview of what a school librarian does. And I am going to share this presentation, so hopefully you'll be able to look at the infographic in a little bit more detail on your own. But this infographic shares the power of school librarians, and it gives you percentages of what states have certified school librarians and some other kinds of really important information to know. But ultimately, here's what a school librarian does. A school librarian has a master's degree in library and information science. They teach students information literacy skills. And in this day and age, there's a lot of like fake news kinds of lessons going on in school libraries. They plan programs like author visits, book parades, they host book clubs. And by the way, all of this they are still doing, even though a lot of it has to be done virtually. They collaborate with classroom teachers and other members of the school community, and they select materials for the school community. And that's really important for this presentation, which I'll get to in just a minute. And they want all students to be lifelong readers and learners. And a typical audience, so my degree it covers K-12. So I can get a job in a school and be highly qualified in a elementary school, middle school, or high school. So that is just kind of an overview of what school librarians do. I'm gonna try to make this big screen and see if I can just go to my next slide now. Oh, that's in a couple of slides. All right, so I'm just going to show you then. We'll see what's going on there. But I wanted to go to pre-readers and early readers, because this is early literacy. I'm going to make this a bit bigger. So this is early literacy for school librarians. There you go. That's pretty. That's pretty big now. That cute face. So I have another picture there that's not showing up. Weird. So Pre-readers and early readers, things school librarians can do to encourage those groups. So some things that I did when I was a practicing school librarian, I hosted a story time for little brothers and sisters who were not yet old enough to be elementary school students. And I also opened that up to folks that maybe were zoned for my school, but weren't there yet, like they were 3, 4 years old. And so that way that got them used to hearing stories, being there for story time, getting familiar with the library. And, you know, visits to the public library are very important in early literacy and any time really. But if you cannot make it to the public library, maybe transportation is an issue, maybe you don't feel comfortable going to the public library, knowing that there is something like that for your pre-readers and early readers going on in the school that those kids will go to can be very comforting and familiar. So that's one thing that I did when I was a practicing school librarian. Also, for pre-readers, early readers, and really any reader, the school librarian can do parent workshops or caregiver workshops where they encourage caregivers to read aloud at home and to just make sure they are reading role models. That is something that Cocky's Reading Express does. When we go to a school, often we will also have a family literacy night. And at a family literacy night, I will share with parents tips on getting books for the home library. I will share tips on finding time to read in the home, because you don't have to sit down and read 30 minutes in a big chunk every night. It can be really hard to find that 30 minutes, but if you read 10 minutes on the way to school, 10 minutes after school, you can find little chunks here and there. The school librarian can encourage visits to the public library and even bring the public library to the school. I am a part of a course right now for partnerships for school and public librarians. And one thing that I heard that was such a great idea is bringing the public library to the school and having a pop-up library. So doing that, like maybe locally, we have a library that has a book bike, for example. So perhaps you could get the public library to bring their book bike into the school, have them bring the decodable books, the books for pre-readers, early readers, and host that at your school library. So not only then are you encouraging the public library to be a part of the lives of these readers, but you're also getting books that maybe you don't have the budget to have, and you're just creating a really great partnership there. In my links that I'm going to share with you soon, I've got some books that are really great ideas to make sure you have in your collection. And if you are a caregiver, books as suggestions to read with your pre-readers and early readers. Because one thing that I think is really important, whether or not your child has a learning disability, just read to them, because that's going to be important no matter what. But I've got some lists. The Geisel Medal, those are books that are great for read alouds. Brightly is one of my favorite websites. They always have really great lists that are really perfectly curated, I think. And they've got one that is 30 of the best, they call it level 1 books for children. And I have a whole nother soapbox about levels, but the books are like the I can read books. So they're great for pre-readers and early readers, but don't get stuck on levels. And then I've got a link, the 100 tips for beginning readers. So those will be some great links to explore. But these are just some materials that you can have in your school library to encourage pre-readers, early readers, some programming ideas that you can use, and things to do to specifically target pre and early readers. Also, one thing that I loved doing when I was a school librarian is I had learning centers, and these are things that I had in my centers. So I also have links. All of these things are available on Amazon, but these are just like 3 of kind of my favorite things. The stuffed animals, you might be like, what in the world is that about? Well, when a child reads with someone, sometimes that can be a really frustrating experience, right? Especially a lot of us are not necessarily homeschooling, but we're schooling at home, right? Because we're virtual. The homeschoolers are amazing. And those homeschool moms, a lot of them were in that Orton Gillingham training. And that was another thing that really my eyes were open to, how amazing those of you who homeschool are. But off topic, so the stuffed animals, if you get a child to read to a stuffed animal, they can't talk back to the child, right? So that just kind of gives them a level of, gives them some comfort, and they won't get as frustrated. So I loved having stuffed animal centers where my students could read to a stuffed animal. Or a real animal, which I'll get to in just a moment. Also, letters, of course, are great manipulatives. One thing I learned in the Orton Gillingham training is how important the tactile learning is, and doing centers like, you know, with rice, where you write the letter in rice, or you have cards where you have a certain word that you want them to spell or say, and then you get the letters from the magnet. So there's all kinds of things that you can do to bring in learning, hands-on learning with your pre-readers and beginning readers. So striving readers, I'm going to start focusing on this group. So these are readers who struggle. So some of the things that, some of the reasons why readers struggle, perhaps they don't have a lot of those early literacy experiences. Maybe they've had poor or inadequate reading instruction, or perhaps they have something like dyslexia or other learning disabilities. And so these are things that there are things that we can do to help these readers, and really teaching reading strategies for striving readers will be good for all readers. So this is an infographic that I'm so excited that you can actually see, but this is from Teen Librarian Toolbox, which is a really amazing resource. She is a teen librarian, and one of her children, her own children, has dyslexia. And so she was on a similar journey that I have been on, because she realized as a librarian that we're not really serving our students with learning disabilities the best way we can. So this is an infographic from last year. All of the information is pretty much still relevant, but what can libraries do to serve kids with dyslexia? It's got some basic facts, which I think a lot of you are well aware of, because you're involved in this program. But what is really interesting and helpful is near the bottom, it says have a variety of formats available for readers with dyslexia, including audiobooks, digital collections. So a lot of you may be using those right now, since you're doing virtual learning. You know, ebooks have definitely been, the use has been on the increase because of not being able to get into libraries to get our hands on print materials. But those digital collections allow readers to increase the font, maybe change the font if needed. So that can be really helpful for readers with dyslexia. Large print books are a really great resource. High-low readers, so these are high interest, low reading level. So that means that it'll be something really interesting. So decodable books, we know how important they are, that they really help readers learn how to read, but sometimes they aren't the most exciting, right? So a high-low book can be something that that struggling, striving reader can read and also be very interested in the subject. Graphic novels are fantastic for these readers. So this, the Teen Librarian Toolbox, the librarian writing this infographic, and she has a whole series of things librarians can do to help students with dyslexia. But one thing that she says for her own personal child is graphic novels are really fantastic for her reader, and that her reader just like devours them. So a lot of times, school librarians will hear from classroom teachers, from parents, that graphic novels, comic books aren't real reading. Well, they definitely are. In fact, a graphic novel won the Newbery Medal, announced in January, New Kid by Jerry Craft. It is a graphic novel, and if you're not familiar with the Newbery Medal, that is given for the most well-written book in the past year. So the fact that a graphic novel won that award is amazing. So don't ever feel like your child is reading graphic novels and they need to read something else. If that's what they're reading and that's what they're excited about and that's helping them learn how to read and be a more fluent reader, then let them read it. So reluctant readers, maybe dyslexic readers, it says, don't judge, be patient, be kind. So this is something to think about. As a school librarian, you are, my experience is in elementary schools. So right now I'm thinking of perhaps you have a 5th grader that comes in and wants to check out a book that you might think at first is more suitable for a 2nd grader. Don't say a word about it. Just let them check it out, because it may be what they have flipped through and they're like, okay, this is what I feel comfortable reading. This is what I can read on my own. I am striving to do my best work and I want to practice, and this is good for me. So don't say a word about it. Just check it out and say, have a nice day. Don't judge. Don't say, hey, you're in 5th grade. This is something for a 2nd grader. Just let them check it out. And there are some other resources and things to look at in that infographic as well. Holy moly. All right, so physical virtual space. So here are some other things that you can do in your library to help all readers, early readers and striving readers. So with your signage, make sure that you are including pictures and not just words. Be mindful of the fonts that you use on signs. Sometimes fonts can be really difficult to read for an excellent reader. And so think about someone who's already struggling. Make sure your font is clear. That'll be really helpful. And then there is a free font that you can download called Open Dyslexic. And I encourage you to download that and create your signs using that font. Also with your library catalog, I know here in South Carolina, a lot of us use Follett's Destiny, and I don't know all around the country what everyone's using, but it's really easy in that library catalog to put in notes so that a child or a caregiver or a teacher can come in and search decodable books. They can search dyslexia. They can just search whatever that book is about and find it on their own. Sometimes they're embarrassed to ask for whatever reason. So that's just an important tip to do in your library, kind of on the back end. Also, with your physical virtual space, make sure your website and computers have voice readers installed. There are several free ones available, but you may also want to reach out to your IT department, because chances are your resource teachers, your speech pathologists, there are other folks in the school who have access to these things, and they may not have ever even thought about, hey, the school library might want access to this as well. There's so much accessible technology out there that you might want to reach out to IT in your school district and see what's available. But there is also a lot of free open source software out there that you can download and use too. Again, schools are kind of funny sometimes. So in terms of if you're allowed to download it, all of that, you might need to reach out to IT. Know how to increase font on e-readers and computers. Have quiet, cozy spaces available. This is really important to think about as a school librarian. There is a move, so just thinking about like what I was talking about earlier with school librarians and what they look like in schools now. School libraries, pre-pandemic are very noisy places. They are exciting places. They are social learning places. There is a lot of conversation and talking going on usually. Well, dyslexic readers, I find, or just lots of readers, not even just struggling readers or striving readers or early readers. Some readers need a quiet, cozy space. So make sure that when you are re-evaluating your spaces and maybe you're making changes to make things more social, keep those quiet, cozy spaces too, because that's important. Pair your print materials with audiobooks. So audiobooks are another one of those things that people can kind of put a stigma on for some reason, like a graphic novel, and say, oh, an audiobook is not real reading. Well, it certainly is, at least I hope so, because that's like 85% of my reading is done from audiobooks, of my personal reading. But for students, early readers, beginning readers, striving readers, all readers, pairing that print resource with an audiobook can be a really great thing to do. You can make kits and sets for teachers, caregivers, and include fact sheets and information with different community resources. So if you have some place near you that is like our local Dyslexia Resource Center, which hosts workshops and they do tutoring and screening, if you have a local place like that, include information on how to get to those folks. Curate websites and apps that will help struggling readers or all readers. Starfall is excellent for beginning readers and early readers. Bookshare and Learning Ally are also really great resources to explore, and I've got links to those in my presentation. Simple programming and collaboration ideas, and I'm so bummed. I'm going to show you my notes. I have a picture of a really cute dog on this page, so I'm really bummed that you can't see it. But when I share my presentation, you'll be able to see it if you want to take a look. But some simple programming ideas. Celebrate Dyslexia Awareness Month. So that is this month, and it's not too late to start. If you have not been celebrating so far, you can share daily facts. You can create a display or like a Bitmoji classroom. You can host a parenting workshop. All of this can be done virtually. You don't have to be doing it face-to-face. Collaborate, like I said earlier, with the speech pathologists and reading interventionists in your school and with your local public library, because all of us can work together to really get these kids reading. Work with classroom teachers and middle school, high schools to create reading buddy programs. I have an article here that you can explore later. It's from School Library Journal, and this is a program where high school students were partnered up with elementary school students, and they read together. And they have data in this article that shows that that really gave those younger readers a little bit more confidence, and those older readers too. So this is great if you've got a middle school or high school student who is a striving reader. Pair them up with a younger reader and have them read together, because it's good for everyone. Bring in a reading animal, reader stuffed. So earlier I talked about the little stuffed animals. Again, it was linked on Amazon, and you can get those and have students read to a stuffed animal, and it just kind of brings down the anxiety. But in my school library and in lots of public libraries, again, pre-pandemic, I guess this is something you could do virtually. I don't know if it would have the same soothing qualities, but in my school, once a week, I had a therapy dog, a registered therapy dog, who came in and students would read to her. Lots of public libraries do this, and it's a great way for readers to again just get practice with reading in a very low stress way. The dog cannot, say, no, you know this sound, and get everybody all anxious. They just sit there and read, and sometimes the child just reads to themselves and like pets the dog. And I'm sure you've all seen research that shows that animals can be stress reducers. So it's kind of a win-win situation. So some items to consider purchasing. I've kind of talked a lot about some of those items already, but decodable books. I cannot tell you enough that decodable books are amazing, and you all have had lots of presentations with decodable books, people and authors, and I think there are probably more coming up this month, but there are lots of great publishers out there who are writing decodable books, and getting them out there. And decodable books, I have a description of what that is, but I think most of you know. And to me, decodable books can help all kids learn to read, because again, that is how my daughter is learning how to read at her Montessori school. But they, to me, are what kids with dyslexia must learn to read, because they have those the certain sounds, they are in a scope and sequence. And my next slide actually is from Teach My Kid to Read, and it just shows you the scope and sequence summary. And you may be thinking like, well, this is fantastic. I want these books in my library, but how can I get them? I don't have any money. I don't have a budget. Well, consider writing a grant. There are lots of great grant opportunities out there. You could do a Donors Choose grant. You could do a Laura Bush literacy grant. Dollar General has grants. There are so many grants for school librarians out there that I encourage you to seek a grant out to purchase decodable books, because they are really important to have in your libraries. And a lot of times we do not have them in our school libraries. You could also connect with the local public library. I know where I am, our local public library has started hiring reading specialists. So they are not librarians, they are educators, even though a librarian is an educator, but these reading specialists are trained in teaching reading. And so my public library has hired some reading instructors, and they have a collection of decodable books. They have a collection of resources about dyslexia for caregivers, for teachers, and it's a really awesome opportunity for collaboration. Other items I've talked about: audiobooks, comic books, graphic novels. Drawing books are great, because even though it may seem like they don't have a lot of reading in them, kids love them and they are reading the directions. And so it's just a great way to practice reading. Cheat code books are a great way to encourage readers, because they're interested in the game they're playing. They want to know how to beat the game. So that's a great book to get them connected with. Large print titles are great. And then again, packaging audiobooks with print books. This is a number of links here that I will, again, I'll be sharing my presentation, and you can explore those. Some of them are just for fun. Some of them are great for caregivers. Some of them are for educators. But the one link that I want to highlight to you is this 20+ items libraries can purchase to help all readers, especially readers who have been diagnosed with dyslexia. I'm going to click on the link, and this is a document that I've been working on where I have lots of resources that are linked. So there's links to decodable book publishers, books by authors with characters who have dyslexia, multisensory materials, lots and lots of great information here that you can use for your school library, your public library. If you are a parent, you can look at this and find some materials that might help you at home, some software that you can explore. Apps are a great way to teach reading and to kind of make it fun and hands-on, and then just some other materials and other links. So now I would love to, let's see, I'm going to go back. I think that that's my last slide. Yeah, so if there's any questions that I can answer, or anything that I need to give a little bit more information on, again, I apologize for the glitches with my presentation. I will fix those before I send you the link. But thank you again for having me.
Well, I don't think we have any questions. I was busy. I got stuck in Facebook again. So I'm going to Zoom us. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Saturday at noon for Tammy Frankfurt with Phonic Books. And thank you. Thank you, Valerie. This was incredible.
Thank you.
So I'm going to Zoom us out.